Hey, Black women, good afternoon. I wanted to give you a lot of reasons to stay away from Black males. I wanted to give you a historical perspective as well as a modern day one, since they like to call us modern women, right? Of why their desperation and their trying to shame us into being with us is not about Black women's benefit, as we already know, but it is completely about the historical need for these Black males to live and leech off of the backs of the hard work of Black women. The other day, I think it was yesterday, as a matter of fact, I reposted a video done by Paris in reference to Black males and also their historical take on never being supportive or supporting of Black women financially. On my last channel, and I don't even know, it might be a video posted on this channel, but I posted a while back paperwork when I did a live. No, I believe it was on the old channel. I did a live and I had a young lady co co-star with me on the entire live, and we talked about several different things about relationships, domestic violence, and etc., and why Black women should get out of these situations because it's only going to end up in their deaths, right? At the end of that live, I put up this document by Patricia Robinson that really goes to show you guys that these Black dudes, all of them, there are no exceptions to the rule, because the fathers who are horrible, they create horrible sons. The Black males in the community that are horrible, like people like Killer Mike and etc., who only see Black women as a vehicle, a means to an end, and whatever that end is, whether it's financial, financial, a place to live, a person to physically, emotionally, and verbally abuse. That's all it is. She's a beginning to a need to their end. And as long as their need gets met, they don't care about her well being or even her existence, as long as she is there to do everything they need that they can't do for themselves. And that is basically what it all comes down to. So I had put this up before. And what I want to do is I want to start out. I was going to start with the video, but I changed my mind. I want to read it first. Her paper, Poor Black Women, right? And then I want to show you a video of how much of a spitfire this woman is. And when she talks about feminism, I want y'all to understand that when I and other Black women who are aware of the fact that white feminism for white women is completely different from feminism that Black women need, or i.e., or thus Black feminism, right? It's on two different economic levels, two different socio-economic levels. It's on another level of individual equity and need, right? It's on a different level of overcoming disparities and discrimination and just plain old white supremacist hate. So let me start by reading this and explaining to Black women that all types of feminism, in my opinion, is good. Whenever there is a vehicle or a political base or forum out there that ensures equal rights, and in our case, the ability to have equity in a system that has been historically leaving you out, that is always a good day, always a good thing, even if we have the hiccups in it that we know we already have with white feminism, where they voted against their best interests in the last election because they didn't want Black women to live a lot better than they do now. So therefore, they allowed and voted for individuals that would put in certain abortion bans throughout the nation. And we see the horrible results those are having on our Black women who were living in poverty at the time, who are now further impoverished as a result of it. So let me read this, and let me go on to say this last thing about feminism and fighting for women's rights all over the world. Most recently, about 3 days ago by now, France checkmated the entire world. France made sure that it did not have these gender wars in their country by enshrining into their country's constitution the fact that women will always have the opportunity and, most importantly, the right to abort children they do not want, or abort children that are a medical risk to their lives. Okay. You might be saying, what the hell has that got to do with us? It has a lot to do with us, because what it does is it sets a beautiful precedent for the rest of the world to follow. And it also makes a hell of a lot of money for France. Like most people who can't get an abortion somewhere else, now they know they can go to a country that is medically safer than going to some other place that is not as safe, and actually set up appointments online via whatever you want to use, Skype, Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, and speak to your doctors online and set up your appointments. And all you got to do is show up for a vacation in Europe and a recovery stay after a much needed abortion. This is why I said they checkmated the entire world, because not only is this going to generate revenue for their country, but it also shows the rest of the patriotic, ignorant, male worshiping world that when you do not respect and appreciate women, they tend to move away from you and not want to fuck with you at all, literally, like the movements of Korea, the B4 movements that are still going strong and heavy to this day. I didn't want to put any, clips in of Korea, since we're talking about Black women specifically today. But in future videos, I want to cover more of the B4 movement, because honestly, I am heavily taken by those women's courage, their tenacity, and their, in my made up word, stick to itness. They're not backing down. And I think Black women need to pick up the same spirit. So let's begin with poor Black women. Poor Black women, including birth control pills and Black children. A statement by the Black Unity Party at that time in Peekskill, New York, which is upstate from me. A response by my Black sisters. A response by Black sisters. Poor Black women by Patricia Robinson. Okay. The statement goes on to say, birth control and Black children. The brothers are calling on the sisters not to take the pill. It is the system's method of exterminating Black people here and abroad. To take the pill means that we are contributing to our own genocide. Haven't we heard that before? However, and mind you, this was written in September 11, 1968, a few months after I was born. However, in not taking the pill, we must have a new sense of value. When we produce children, we are aiding the revolution in the form of nation building. I don't understand why these guys keep talking about Black women having legions of children. It's going to be one day this revolution that won't be televised, when we already know as Black women that these lazy, shiftless, do nothing, capricious in nature, capricious meaning only thinking about sex all day, no count mother lovers, are not going to ever get off their asses and get up and do anything, let alone take over the country and win back their position. They are unequivocal losers. Whenever a person or a group of Black males don't even want to graduate and get a high school diploma, the last thing in the world that is ever going to be in their realm of possibility is to start a revolution. Let's keep going. However, in not taking the pill, we have a new sense of value. When we produce children, we are aiding the revolution in the form of nation building. Our children must have pride in their history, in their heritage, in their beauty. Our children must not be brainwashed as we were. Procreation is beautiful, especially if we are devoted to the revolution, which means that our value system be realized. Our value system be altered to include the revolution as the responsibility. A good deal of the supremacist white efforts to sterilize the world's non-whites out of existence is turning towards the Black people of America. New trends in race control have led the architects of genocide to believe that sterilization projects. Let me start that whole part over again. Procreation is beautiful, especially if we are devoted to the revolution, which means that our value system be altered to include the revolution as the responsibility. A good deal of the supremacist white efforts to sterilize the world's non-whites out of existence is turning toward the Black people of America. New trends in race control have led the architects of genocide to believe that sterilization projects aimed at the Black man in the United States can cure American internal troubles. I just want to say that I know she's speaking about the benefits of Black women, but this is historically incorrect when she says new trends in race control have led the architects of genocide to believe that sterilization projects aimed at the Black man in the United States can cure American internal troubles. Now, maybe she created a typo, because there has never been in the history of America a sterilization campaign or done on Black males only. Now, this sterilization campaign and this sterilization architect of genocide that she's talking about, sterilization project, was done on Black women at least 3 times in the history of America. Twice down south and once up north. So maybe that was a typo. I think it was a typo. So it goes on to say, under the cover of an alleged campaign to alleviate poverty, white supremacist Americans and their dupes are pushing an all-out drive to put up rigid birth control measures into every Black home. No such drive exists within the white American world. In some cities, Peekskill, Harlem, Mississippi, and Alabama, welfare boards are doing their best to force Black women receiving aid to submit to sterilization. This disguised attack on Black future generations is rapidly picking up popularity among determined genocidal engineers. This country is prepared to exterminate people by the pill or by the bomb. Therefore, we must draw strength from ourselves. She has a summary note here that says, you may see why there is a family planning office in the Black community of Peekskill. There's a family planning center in every Black community, in every Hispanic community, but I know we're only talking about Black people today, but it is there because Planned women in general. Planned Parenthood serves quite a few reasons to be in the society, in the community, and society on a whole. Like, number one, the biggest reason for me that it exists is that it keeps young teenage girls who are taken advantage by boys of their age or lecherous old bastards older than them, the ability to have a life child-free after becoming pregnant by someone who has tricked them into having sex with them before they actually really was ready to have sex, and not knowing all of the real ramifications of being pregnant and having a child when you are still a child. Another couple of reasons is that when some of these same girls come from households that are very religiously strict and want to put all the burden and blame on the little girl, when it actually took a boy or a lecherous perverted old man to impregnate this little girl, all of them knew, the little girl, the boy, the older man that usually preys on young girls, right, knows that they should use condoms, knows that they should use some form of birth control to prevent pregnancy. And in women, it's important for them as young girls and older to know that not only should they be thinking about pregnancy, but they should most importantly be thinking about the death sentence through transmitted sexual disease that 99.9% of these Black dudes will transfer to you during a sexual act, which is why you should stay the fuck away from them. To continue with the letter, the sisters reply to the brothers calling for birth control pills to be stopped and for Black children to be born. The sisters' reply is, "Dear brothers, poor Black sisters decide for themselves whether to have a baby or not to have a baby. We take the pills or precise birth control in other ways. It's important. Let me start again. Dear brothers, I'm doing all these Floridian slips today, right? Dear brothers, poor Black sisters decide for themselves whether to have a baby or not to have a baby. If we take the pills or precise birth control in other ways, it's because of poor Black men." Absolutely. And later on in this same live, when I pull up the stats about how Black men and their poverty affect Black women and their children, I hope that it will be a true deterrent in Black women deciding to go into relationships, entertain, have sex, marry, indulge in any way Black males outside of saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and goodbye. Poor Black sisters decide for themselves whether to have a baby or not to have a baby. If we take the pills or precise birth control in other ways, it's because of poor Black men. Now, here's how it is. Poor Black men won't support their families, won't stick by their women. All they think about is the street, dope and liquor, women, a piece of ass, and their cars. Pretty true, right? That seems to be the prevailing consensus when it comes to every nigga on the corner, every bum ass nigga in the barbershop, every bum ass nigga with a microphone on YouTube, and every bum ass nigga that can actually become some type of rapper, right? Or some bum ass nigga that he's either been in jail or about to come out of jail. Seems to be the general consensus. Oh, I forgot gang members. So now here's how it is. Poor Black women won't support here's how it is. Poor Black men won't support their families, won't stick by their women. All they think about is the street, dope and liquor, women, a piece of ass, in their cars. That's all that counts. That's all that counts. That's all that counts. Poor Black women would be fools to sit up in the house with a whole lot of children and eventually go crazy. Sick, brokenhearted, no place to go, no sign of affection, nothing. Middle-class white men have always done this to their women, only more sophisticated like. So when Whitey put out the pill and poor Black sisters spread the word, we saw how simple it was not to be a fool for men anymore. Politically, we would say men could no longer exploit us sexually or for money and leave the babies with us to bring up. So, what this sister is talking about is back in the days, today, in the future, baby trapping. I'm going to do that one again. So, when Whitey put out the pill and poor black sisters spread the word, we saw how simple it was not to be a fool for men anymore. We would say men could no longer exploit us sexually or for money and leave babies with us to bring up. That was the first step in our waking up. I don't know what the fuck made them go back to sleep, but yes. When I was born in 1968, my mom was a teenage mom. She was part of many programs for Black women to become professionals with college degrees and professionals back in those days, believe it or not, with a high school diploma. My mother was part of a Dionne Warwick program for young Black girls who were teenage moms. In this program, my mother got one-on-one instruction from like a mentor. She got advocation and peer mentoring and peer advocation to continue school, get a high school diploma, continue school, get a first level, or they used to call it back in the days, community college or lower level degree. My mother did all of the above. Okay. Later, she fucked it all up by getting married and getting addicted to narcotic by the help of, once again, a Black male, my father, who was addicted to heroin from doing one tour, a full tour in the Vietnam War. But nonetheless, if she would have stuck to me as a Black woman first, looking out for myself first, centering me first, worshiping and worrying about me self, being as selfish as I can be about myself self, she would have never, ever allowed that Black male to let her shoot anything unnatural into her veins or do anything disgustingly addictive to her body. So now, poor Black sisters decide for themselves whether to have a baby or not to have a baby. If we take the pills or practice precise birth control in other ways, it's because of poor Black men. Now, here's how it is. Poor Black men won't support their families, won't stick by their women, all think about the street, dope and liquor, women, a piece of ass in their cars. That's all that counts. Poor Black women would be fools to sit up in the house with a whole lot of children and eventually go crazy. Sick, heartbroken, no place to go, no sign of affection, nothing. Middle-class white women have always done this. Middle-class men, white men have always done this to their women, but in a more sophisticated way. So when Whitey put out the pill and poor Black sisters spread the word, we saw how simple it was not to be a fool for men anymore. Politically, we would say men could no longer exploit us sexually or for our money and leave the babies with us to bring up. That was the first step in our waking up. Black women have always been told by Black men that they were black, ugly, evil, bitches, and whores. In other words, we were the real niggas in this society, oppressed by whites, male and female, and the Black man too. And we know that to be true. How many times has Snoop Dogg said, yeah, but we don't love them hoes, right? And when he's singing about gin and juice, he's talking about bitches and hoes, and it ain't no fun if they homie can't get none. Remember all that bullshit? So this is exactly the same thing this woman is talking about some 30 years before it actually happened, right? or 20 years and some change before it happened. And yet these dudes have still not changed. They're still the same, lazy, good for nothing. All I want to do is get drunk, drug, fuck, sleep with children, and not be productive in any way to society. It is a fucking shame. It really is a fucking shame. I'm going to read it again. Black women have always been told by black men that they were black, ugly, evil bitches and whores. In other words, we were the real niggers in this society, opposed and oppressed by whites, males and female, and the black male too. Now, a lot of black brothers are in a new bag. Black women are being asked by militant black brothers not to practice birth control. That's how she put it, to practice birth control, because it's a form of whitey committing genocide on black people. Can anybody say Nature Boy, Lapeef Network, and the rest of these stupid motherfuckers on here, Kevin Samuels, and etc., right? Well, true enough, but it takes two to practice genocide, and black women are able to decide for themselves. We're not children. We don't need to be led like dogs. So there's no reason for black women to run around talking about we need men to lead. Lead you where? Off the fucking cliff? One more time. Not a lot of the black brothers are into, now a lot of the black brothers are into a new bag. Black women are being asked by militant black brothers not to practice black birth control because it's a form of whitey committing genocide on black people. Well, true enough, but it takes two to practice genocide, and black women are able to decide for themselves. Just like poor people all over the world, whether they will submit to genocide. For us, birth control is freedom to fight genocide of black women and children. One more time. Well, true enough, but it takes two to practice genocide, and black women are able to decide for themselves, just like poor people all over the world, whether they will submit to genocide. For us, birth control is freedom to fight genocide of black women and children. And right there, she's talking about the sacrifice that black women make when they stay in these bad, dysfunctional relationships with black males, and their children and themselves, black women, suffer. So this is what she means by, for us, birth control is freedom to fight genocide of black women and children. So without the birth control and the freedom that birth control gives, you'd be locked into the opening scene from the movie Superfly, where Superfly is chasing this fucking junkie through the streets and eventually catches up with him after he, robs Superfly, takes his money and his dope. And he chases this dope fiend into an abandoned building, into an apartment where there's a black woman with a newborn baby, probably a week old, laying on the floor in newspaper with about 7 or 10 other children around her, screaming and crying as Superfly is kicking the shit out of this dope fiend that stole his dope and his money. So that's the type of shit that was going on in 1968. And what Miss Robinson is trying to say to you is the freedom that birth control allows black women to have to get out of and stay out of those relationships or prevent it altogether. So, like the Vietnamese had decided to fight genocide, the South American poor are beginning to fight back, and the African poor will fight back too. Poor black women in the U.S. have to fight back out of their own expense. One more time. Like the Vietnamese have decided to fight genocide, the South American poor are beginning to fight back and the African poor will fight back too. Poor Black women in the US have to fight back out of our own experience of oppression. Having too many babies stops us from supporting our children, teaching them the truth, or stopping the brainwashing, as you say, and fighting Black men who still want to kill us too, and exploit us. I'm going to do that again for the Black women. Poor Black women in the US have to fight back out of our own experience of oppression. Having too many babies stops us from supporting our children, teaching them the truth, or stopping the brainwashing, as you say, and fighting Black men who still want to use and exploit us. This is 1968, y'all. She talking like she's hanging out with us right now. But we don't think you're going to understand us because you are a bunch of little middle class people and we are poor Black women. The middle class never understands the poor because they always need to use them as they want to use poor Black women's children to gain power for themselves. You'll run the Black community with your kind of Black power, you on top. Let me do the last. I'm going to do the last paragraph again. And I want to explain a few things that popped into my mind as I was reading it. So she says, now she's talking to white America now, right? And back in 1968, she was referring to them as the middle class, as white America. But there was also very much a Black middle class, and I did a video on this channel, I believe it was, about the old black and white reels of professional middle class Black women who were living lives of luxury, living soft lives and all the rest of that stuff y'all talk about, where these women were paid, chauffeurs driving them to and from work every day, big ass houses in New Jersey and New York, and they were not taking any shorts and they were not married either. Okay, last paragraph again. But we don't think you're going to understand us because you are a bunch of little middle class people and we are poor Black women. The middle class never understands the poor because they always need to use them as you want to use Black women's children to gain power for yourself. You'll run the Black community with your kind of Black power, you on top. So now in that last paragraph, she sort of like started off talking to white people, then segued into the Black man without saying it, but it's written because she sways when she says right here, the middle class will never understand the poor because they always need to use them. Boom. That's the white people, right? Then she picks up with the Black man. She says, as you want to use poor Black women's children to gain power for yourself, referring back to that ridiculous shit about Black women having enough children to birth a nation or an army of revolution, which is a bunch of bullshit that they need to let die with the record or the song that Gil Scott-Heron made called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. That shit is a song and it's going to stay as a song because these Black dudes ain't about shit. And Black women don't have time to be breathing children to die for a lost cause. You don't have to birth people to stage a coup when the revolution can be mental. If Black people, and I'm talking about Black women now, fuck Black males. If Black women, that I'm calling Black people currently, would get the understanding that, sister, you need a sisterhood, sister, you need unity, sister, you need solidarity, sister, you need the next Black woman next to you. When you want, sister, she's there to provide, sister. She's there to guide you, sister. So let's stop all the fucking bashing of older Black women and causing issues between mothers and daughters with all of this. My mom was toxic, so now I need to go no contact because a whacked out fucking therapist told me so. and also because the majority of young Black women who don't know what they're doing and don't know what's going on down the line before them because they haven't reached that point of their lives yet. Real talk with Yanni would be out here telling Black women that their mamas and their grandmamas don't know shit. Because to them, we're all antebellum slave names and looking to do harm to the very women that we brought into this world and that we see as extensions of ourselves. Let's stop speaking like that. Matrix. Hashtag expose. All Black older women are not out here hating on and wanting the worst for Black women. The majority of us are out here teaching, preaching, giving, and living lives where we're trying to ensure the upliftment of our sisters that are not as old as us, who don't know what life has done to us, and who need to be given a pat on the shoulder and a positive thought and encouragement when they have lost their way or they trying to figure out what's the next stage in this fucked up game. This is what we're out here doing. This is what we need to be doing. So now that we've seen this letter from Patricia, we'll end it because it's only like two more pages. And then I'm going to show you a video of just how serious she was about her love for Black women. She's gone to glory now, but she was down here fighting the true fight while she was in flesh. So Patricia goes on to say, it's time to speak to the whole question of the position of poor Black women in this society and in this historical period of revolution and counter-revolution. We have the foregoing analysis of their own perspective, and it offers all of us some very concrete points. First, that the class hierarchy, as seen from the poor Black woman's position, is one of white male power, followed by the white female, then the Black male, and lastly, the Black woman. She didn't say woman, I'm saying woman because I hate to be called the female. Historically, the myth in the Black world is that there are only two free people in the United States: the white man and the Black woman. The myth was established by the Black man in the long period of his frustration when he longed to be free, to have the material and social advantages of his oppressor, the white man. One examination on the myth is this so-called freedom was based on the sexual provocatives given by the white man on the Black woman. It was fantasized by the Black man that she enjoyed it. Like how they call us bed wenches and shit, right? The Black woman was needed and valued by the white female as a domestic. Anybody say to help? The Black woman diluted much of the actual oppression by the white female and by the white male. With the help of the Black woman, the white woman had free time from mothering and housework responsibilities and could escape her domestic prison overseen by the white man. The poor Black woman still occupies the position of a domestic in this society, rising no higher than public welfare when the frustrated male deserts her and the children. Public welfare was instituted primarily for poor whites during the Depression of the 30s to stave off their rising revolutionary violence. It was considered as a contemporary stopgap only. She's absolutely right. But before that, they had quite a few other programs, like it was a program for the widows whose husbands were in World War One. Some of those women were also black, but this was only for white women only, not even Asian people. And later in the live, I'm going to explain to you the legal historical era, or not era, the legal how am I going to say it, chronological order of how and when people besides whites got real rights in this country. Okay, so what she's talking about here is the fact that you had welfare. Black women were not allowed to be accepted by welfare and actually get services and help and resources until the 1970s. Although welfare had come into existence around the 1930s in a newer form than what it is now during Roosevelt's The New Deal package. Prior to that, there was another program done with Social Security that was called something like this Surviving Widows program or something like that. You can look it up and you can find it. And that was for white women through Social Security, where when their husband died and left them with children, they had no way of providing or taking care of financially. The government stepped in and gave a monthly allowance to those women to help them live and survive. Later on, the white woman's name, who was the first person to receive Social Security benefits, would go down in the Hall of Fame. And I literally mean this. Okay? She's in the history books as being the first woman to ever receive the Social Security check. And this is real. So that is what she's talking about, Miss Robinson. But all along, even though these programs existed, white women were the only ones who were allowed to take advantage of these programs. White women got it every time they applied. Black women, if they applied, they were rejected, or their applications were just completely dismissed and ignored for a decade or more. So, Ms. Robinson goes on to say, the poor Black woman still occupies the position of a domestic in this society, rising no higher than public welfare when the frustrated male deserts her and the children. Public welfare was instituted primarily for poor whites during the Depression of the 30s to stave off their rising revolutionary violence. It was considered as a temporary stop or gap only. The poor Black male deserted the poor Black woman and fled to the cities where he made his living by his wits hustling. One day I'm going to do a video on the prostitution and the hand that Black males played in it in exploiting their own women in Louisiana, where my people are from, which was the reason that Mardi Gras was even created and given birth to. And I also want to talk about how Black male-driven prostitution of Black women and girls was also heavily done, and there was a huge era of this in Chicago and Detroit. I want to do a video one because there are literally books written about how prevalent and pervasive this shit was in these cities. If you guys ever get a chance to see this movie by Abby Lincoln called Nothing But a Man, Abby Lincoln in that movie has a brief snapshot of the prostitution that was going on in Mississippi all the way up to Detroit of the Black women, when those Black males were not allowed to work in the factories for one reason or the other. Instead of them being a field hand or finding other work to do, no matter what it was, even if it was down to shining shoes, they decided to literally put their daughters and their women out on the street and let white men primarily fuck their women so that they could get money. So that is another video I want to take a long time to put together to show you, because I really hate history like that, because it is the reason why the Creole culture was created. It is the reason why Louisiana is the way it is. It is the reason why a lot of Creole places are the way they are. And I don't mean just a mixture of the people, I mean the culture of the women. The fact that prostitution and being born to be a woman that serves men in a brothel is so much part of the Black American woman's history. It is disgusting. So I continue. The poor Black man deserted the poor Black woman and fled to the cities where he made his living by his wits hustling. The Black male did not question the kind of society he lived in, other than on the basis of racism. And this would equate to the birth and the beginning of stupid niggas like Iceberg Slim and etc. The white man wouldn't let them up because I'm Black. Other rationalizations included blaming the Black woman, which has been a much described phenomenon. We hear that now when they say that dumb shit like the Black woman is the Black man's worst enemy, when we don't control shit in America that keeps them from going to school, getting an education, being a fucking man, which is more than just having a dick, but it literally means to be responsible, reliable, and dependable. You look the fucking shit up in the definition. It talks about the responsibility of the race. I'm sorry, of the gender. Not talking about the fucking sexuality of the person. It talks about the responsibility level. It's just fucking incredible how these Black males are just so fucking stupid. They never learn. They never change. They're just fucking hopeless, like a fucking penny with a hole in it. They are hopeless. And I really want to live to see the day where Black women realize this, understand it, and move completely the fuck away from them. And all these people that are out here talking about all this Black utopia and this marvelous fantastical day that's going to come where, you know, the Black community is just thriving and popping, and the place where everybody wants to be with these ugly Black fucking males leading Black women and children. That's going to never happen because, first of all, Black women and children are human beings. They're not animals, pets, or anything beneath Black males, and they don't have to be led, taught, or made to follow or be subjugated by people or things known as Black males who can't even lead themselves or do anything for themselves the right way. How the fuck are you supposed to do anything for anybody else? You can't even get out of your own way, and you expect me to follow you where? Into hell? I think not. So, let's get it. Other rationalizations include blaming the Black woman, which has been a much described phenomenon. The Black man wanted to take the master's place and all that went with it. Now, I say this all the time. I always say, these dudes want to be the overseer on the plantation, and the Black woman is the slave. They want to be the Black woman's new overseer, her new master. They don't want to be your partner. They don't want to see you as an equally functioning human being or equally functioning adult. They want to see you as somebody that they can lord over, control, manipulate, dominate, and eventually kill, because the Black femicide rates are out of fucking control. And I need Black women to realize this, accept it, acknowledge it, understand it, and stay the fuck away from it by not dealing with Black males at all. They're desperate Black women. This is why they make videos talking about how you should be lucky to have them, because they know they're not worth anything. Let's get back to it. Simultaneously, the poor Black woman did not question the social and economic system. She saw her main problem, as described in the accompanying article, social, economic, and psychological oppression by the Black man. But awareness in this case has moved to a second phase and exposes an important fact in the whole process of oppression. It takes two to oppress. A proper dialectical perspective to examine at this point in our own movement. It takes two to oppress. It takes two to oppress. It takes two to oppress. Keep your ass away from them, out of relationships with them. Stop fucking them. Stop having them. Stop being around them, and they are not able to oppress you. The only thing they could do is try to attack you, and then you blow their fucking wig back. It's that simple. It takes two to oppress. A proper dialectical perspective to examine at this point in our movement. An examination of the process of oppression in any or all of its forms shows simply that at least two parties are involved. The need for the white man, particularly to oppress others, reveals his own anxiety and inadequacy about his own maleness and humanity. Very true, very true, very true. Black male writers have eloquently analyzed this social and sociological fact. I'm going to talk about him in a minute, Mr. Franklin Frazier, who wrote the original book, African American Families in the United States, which was the basis or the fundamental information that was provided to Senator Monahan before his people in his office, I forget what they call them, aides, legislative aides, put together that bullshit ass Monahan report. Many Black male writers have eloquently analyzed this social and psychological fact. Generally, a feeling of inadequacy can be traced to all those who desperately needed power and authority over others throughout history. When she tells this story, the first fucking person that came to my mind when she said generally a feeling of inadequacy can be traced back to all those who desperately need power and authority over others throughout history, the first person that popped into my mind was Napoleon. The second thing that popped into my mind was the Arabic slave trade. In other words, one's concept of oneself becomes based on one's class or power position in a hierarchy. Now, what she's talking about here, right, is the workings of stratification in society, the different levels in society, not a caste system, but the different levels that you have been born into that you could change. You could change based off of your own mental ability and you getting out there putting elbow grease and just working on what what it is you want to do in life and who you want to become. You could change it. You come out of the poverty in the projects, you can move into a beautiful fucking house in suburban or rural or urban America and live wonderfully without Tyrone, of course. So, an example of the process of oppression in any or all of its forms slowly shows simply that at least two parties are involved. The need for the white man, particularly to oppress others, reveals his own anxiety and inadequacy about his own maleness and humanity. Many Black male writers have eloquently analyzed this social and psychological fact. Generally, a feeling of inadequacy can be traced to all those who desperately need power and authority over others throughout history. In other words, one's concept of oneself becomes based on one's class or power position in a hierarchy. Any endangering of this power position brings on a state of madness and irrationality within the individual, which exposes the basic fear and insecurity beneath. Politically speaking, the imperialists are paper tigers, but the oppressor must have the operation of the oppressed. But the oppressor must have the cooperation of the oppressed. That is very true. Of those he must feel better than. The oppressed and the damned are placed in an inferior position by force of arms, military and police, physical strength, and later, by threats of such force, but the long-time maintenance of power over others is secured by psychological manipulation and seduction. That's why I keep telling you people to read Dark Psychology by William Cooper. I'm going to read that again. But the long-time maintenance of power over others is secured by psychological manipulation and seduction. The oppressed must begin to believe in the divine right and position of the kings, the inherent right of an elite to rule, the supremacy of a class or an ethnic group, the power of such condensed wealth as money. Oh, that's my grandson. Just a moment. Hold on one moment.
Hello.
Hello, my baby.
Baby.
Yeah, I know you aren't. What's going on? Okay, so then what we have is I'll go back to that paragraph since I was interrupted and go through it. So, an examination of the process of oppression is any or all of its forms shows simply that at least two partners are involved. The need for the white man, particularly to oppress others, reveals his own anxiety and inadequacy about his own maleness and humanity. Many Black male writers have eloquently analyzed this social and psychological fact. Generally, a feeling of inadequacy can be traced to all those who desperately need power and authority over others throughout history. In other words, one's concept of oneself becomes based on one's class or power position in a hierarchy. Any endangering of this power position brings on a state of madness and irrationality within the individual, which exposes the basic fear and insecurity beneath. Politically speaking, the imperialists are paper tigers. The oppressor must have the cooperation of the oppressed. Of those he must feel better than. The oppressed and the damned are placed in an inferior position by force of arms, physical strength, and ladder. By threats of such force, but the long-time maintenance of power over others is secured by psychological manipulation and seduction. The oppressed must begin to believe in the divine right and the position of kings, the inherent right of the elite rule, the supremacy of a class or an ethnic group, the power of such condensed wealth as money and private property to give to its owners high social status. So a gigantic and complex myth has been woven by those who have power in the society of the inevitability of classes and the superiority and inferiority of certain groups. The oppressed begin to believe in their own inferiority and are left in their own and are left in their lifetime with no. Let me do that again. The oppressed begin to believe in their own inferiority and are left in their lifetime with two general choices: to identify with the oppressor, to white assimilate, or to rebel against him. Not really a rebel, but to recognize yourself as being totally equal to them without feeling like you got to become them is called acculturation. So either you acculturate or you assimilate. To acculturate would be better because everybody in their culture is just as good and equal, if not better or more than white culture. So stop code switching and all that shit and love yourself and know that your existence, your culture, and everything is probably more richer, fuller, and been around longer than theirs because they've only been in existence for the last 8,000 years. And other people, all other people of culture, of color and culture, have been here way longer than them. So the oppressed begin to believe in their own inferiority and are left in their lifetime with two general choices: to identify with the oppressor, to imitate him, or to rebel against him. Rebellion does not take place as long as the oppressed are certain of their inferiority and the innate superiority of the powerful. In essence, a neurotic illusion. The oppressed appear to be in love with their chains. Oh my God, is she so real with that one? Oh my goodness, that is very deep. Rebellion does not take place as long as the oppressed are certain of their inferiority and the innate superiority of the powerful. In essence, a neurotic illusion. The oppressed appear to be in love with their chains. In a capitalist society, all power to rule is imagined in male symbols, and in fact, all power in a capitalist society is in male hands. Capitalism is a male supremacist society. Western religious gods are all male. The city basis of civilization is male, as opposed to the country, which is female. The city is a revolt against earlier female principles of nature and a man's dependence on them. All domestic and international political and economic decisions are made by men and enforced by males. And their symbolic extension, guns, which is a symbolic extension of the symbolism of a dick, right? Women have become the largest oppressed group in a dominant male, aggressive, capitalistic culture. The next largest oppressed group is the product of their wombs, the children, who are never pressed into service or labor for the maintenance of a male-dominated class society. And she's right. When you think about it, like most Black people who are poor and they never escape poverty and they like to live in it and they love worshiping white people, their children are the ones that seriously are part of that school or prison to school, grade school to prison pipeline, because they allow the setup of the failure of their children in school to place them in situations where law enforcement intercedes. And when law enforcement comes in, the first thing they want to do is shackle the child, take them away, and storage them in prison or wherever else they put them, so that their usefulness and youthfulness expires. And that's the severity of that statement that she made right there. And it's real fucking sick. It is very sick. Let me read that last sentence again and go on, finish out. The next largest oppressed group is the product of their wombs. This is why these black males are always talking about black women should have children, because they're into advocating and supplying white supremacist dominant culture in America. So the largest group oppressed is the product of their wombs, the children who are never pressed into service and labor for the maintenance of a male. Who are ever pressed into service and labor for the maintenance of a male-dominated class society. She should have said white male class society. Rebellion by poor black women. The rebellion by poor black women, the bottom of a class hierarchy, heretofore not discussed, places the question, what kind of society will poor women demand and struggle for? I want to know that question too, because whenever we keep asking them to break free of those fucking chains that they love, which is, i.e., the symbolism and actual physicality of the black male, they give you every motherfucking excuse, more than the motherfucker going to jail, to understand that your future dictates you remove yourself from him to prosper, to progress, to grow. And these chicks just really don't want to accept it. But the ones that are smart, they really get it quickly. So let's do that and just get out and finish that up. If it is granted that it takes two to oppress, those who neurologically need to oppress, and those who if it is granted that it takes two to oppress those who neurotically need to oppress, and those who neurotically need to be oppressed, yeah, because it's a sick combination, a sick relationship, right? Then what happens when the woman in a capitalist society awakens to the reality? She can either identify with the male and opportunistically imitate him, appearing to share his power and giving him the surplus product of her body, the child, to use and exploit. This is what the stupid black woman does. Or she can rebel and remove the child from exploitation and oppressive male authority, which is what all the black women on YouTube, like me and others, who are telling black women to center themselves, get away from these black males, stop having black male children. This is what we're telling you. Make the choice, black women, to be a rebel and remove the child from exploitative and oppressive male authority, and remove yourself from that shit too. Rebellion by poor black women, the bottom of the class hierarchy, heretofore not discussed. She didn't go into the whole demographics of us being the bottom, but we know what it is. When we live at the bottom, we stay at the bottom. We teach our daughters to stay at the bottom. They teach their daughters, and they teach their daughters. And these black males continue to be homosexuals on the couch, continue to commit black femicide, continue to human traffic our little girls, continue to prostitute black women, molest, rape, and violate children, stalk them on the streets after school, and they're the ones that end up in all of these black femicide videos on Black Girl Gone, Twisted Crimes, and everything else. Rebellion by poor black women, the bottom of the class hierarchy, heretofore not discussed, places the question of what kind of society will the poor black woman demand and struggle for. Already she demands the right to have birth control. Middle class black and white women like the middle class black and white women, she is aware that it takes two to oppress, and that she and other poor people no longer are submitting to oppression. In this case, genocide. She aligns herself with the have nots in a wider world and their revolutionary struggles. She's been forced by historical conditions to withdraw the children from male dominance and to educate and support them herself. In this very process, male authority and exploitation are seriously weakened. That's the point we be trying to make all the time. Let me read that part again. She has been forced by historical conditions to withdraw the children from the male dominance and to educate and support them herself. In this very process, male authority and exploitation are seriously weakened. Further, she realizes that the children will be used as all poor children have been used throughout history, as poorly paid mercenaries fighting to keep or put an elite group in power. Through these steps in the accompanying analytic article, she has begun to question aggressive male domination and the class society which enforces it, capitalism. This question in time will be posed to the entire black movement in this country. So what she does is she's trying to explain to black women, this is the question before you, but don't think you can run from it, because it's going to continue to happen as long as you keep having these children that the white man can use, the black man can use, the white woman, and everybody else. It's not necessarily a situation of not ever having children, but it's more so a situation of having children, and like they said, being the black woman who can not only understand that you got to withdraw, take your child away from male dominance of all kinds, but especially black male dominance, right? Educate and support them yourself. Meaning, you got to get out of this bullshit mind frame of thinking that only a man can raise a little boy, because I've told you that's definitely not true. I've done it myself 3 times. And the thing is, you need to have a level of communication with your children, a particular goal you want them to meet, and you have to have the mentality that men that are dysfunctional are worse being in the home than not being in the home. And when you explain that to your child, you don't talk about how fucked up the people are. You talk about, if you want a child to grow properly, have the right experiences, the right mentality, do what's right. Understand that women are people to be respected the same as males are, because this is a patriarchy. So every time children look around, they see on television, newspapers, magazines, anything, that males are more important than women. So as you're raising these boys, you have to teach them that women count, women matter. No one is born to be your slave. No one is born to sexually please you or any other type of pleasing. You are alone in this world, responsible for yourself. You have to be able to stand on your own and contribute to society the things that you want to get out of it. That is what they got to start teaching these children. If they want them to have good black fathers, they have to learn they have to be good black fathers. They want good black mothers, they got to teach them to be good black mothers. If you want to have these so-called men that you guys call providers, you got to teach these boys that education is important, that not listening to the foolishness and the tomfuckery of other black males talking about fuck these hoes, we don't love these hoes, and all this other shit that males talk about, taking drugs, drinking, and going through some type of fucked up rites of passage in jail, is not what makes a man. That makes a fucking idiot. That makes a failure. That makes a clown in society. That makes somebody that no one takes serious, that everybody would want to see eliminated or eradicated off the face of the fucking earth. You got to teach them this. So, listen, I want to show y'all now my little fiery lady and go a little faster with this live because the sun is seriously dimming behind me. And whenever I start talking to y'all, that is always what I do, y'all. I always start going so damn slow. Sorry, y'all. Because I'm comfortable. And she was a molecule that we desperately needed to stay here for quite some time. Because during this current Black women movement, she would have made an epic impact. Completely epic. I want you guys to see this here where when we're talking about the politics of poverty, right? The one thing that I can say is really good about Taraji running around screaming about her paycheck is that she brings to light that Black women who live in extreme poverty deal with extreme income inequalities, structural racism, and the fact that we are everybody's beast of burden. People feel like they can be microaggressive towards us and passive aggressive and fire us anytime they want and have us working hard for money that doesn't meet the amount of work and the labor we're putting into the job. This is what they do. Like everything else, y'all, I will put the links to all of these articles in the description so you can peruse them and read them at your leisure. And this sums it up completely. Black women are underpaid, undervalued, and overworked. That's my goddamn opinion. Okay. And that's really how I see things because we are. All right. We just really are. It's insane. It's crazy. It is really insane. Then you have I have went through this. This was from an independent news site that I go on every now and then. I'll show you what it is. It's KFF, right? And this in particular one was talking about poverty rate by race and ethnicity. I want to tell you that I like these charts, but I also know that a lot of this shit is not true when it comes to always trying to put Black people in last place, because I can only speak for what I know about where I'm from and where I live. Like you see these numbers here for New York, where this is supposed to be. Let me take it to the top so you can see it. This is, oh yeah, I just move it up like this. Okay, let's bring it close. So these are white, Black, Hispanic. I'm gonna just use those three, right? Because they're always putting us last. In New York City, this right here would be reversed. Black people would be second and Hispanic people would be last. And that is not any gaslighting or age, just how it is. Because the majority of Black women in New York City, that says New York, so they probably include upstate. But even when you include upstate, Black people, since we've been here longer, and it doesn't matter how many that they pour in, you guys got to understand how this works, right? Most of these people, they only make money when they're young, because by the time they're old, because they're not really citizens unless they become citizens, They don't have anywhere to retire to. So the majority of these people these days who are my age and older, they're in homeless shelters, or they're living in places where they barely can eat and they barely could put money together for rent and pay their bills and everything else. This is what happens to the migrants when they come here and stay here and they don't become citizens, right? So, for that reason alone, in addition to the fact that most Black women in New York City and New York State work for either the city, the state, or the federal government. So when you work for the three branches of your state, you're going to make more money than the majority collective of people who work privately. Because the majority of people who work privately in New York City or New York State do not make up a huge percentage in the private world where they're making money like the white folks. It's only like 1 or less than 2% of us that work private and make big bucks. That's the honesty of it. The rest of us are so-called blue collar workers, myself included, where we make on the average about $50,000 to $60,000 a year. Me, I'm also in that range as well. Mine is more towards 60, 70 because I took a pay cut because I went back to the city from working from the state. When I worked at the state, I was making $70,000, right? For New York City, that's good. And for those of you people who don't live here and think you know everything about New York City, shut the fuck up. $50,000 and up is good for living in New York City. You can find an apartment and you can also find a fucked up house on like one of those houses that got to be rehabbed and shit that you get from HUD, or maybe they have a foreclosure on USDA or something like that. You can do it because I'm actually doing it because I like the USDA houses because they're 100% free finance, meaning you don't have to worry about homeowners insurance or any of that other shit. You just pay the huge, and it is a huge fucking mortgage every month that makes up for all that bullshit. And as long as you pay for your house for the amount of time that you have the loan out for, you're Gucci. And then if you're here and you actually take advantage of all of these housing programs that they have in existence for homeowners that have to deal with housing the migrants, then you're going to be on easy street, which is what your girl Steph is trying to do. Okay, back to the video. I just have to point that out because you got to understand, Black people, that white people are always trying to psychologically defeat you and make you feel like you can't win because everything is stacked against you. So a lot of times, a lot of this data is 100% skewed. And I can only talk about the facts of what I know when I look at this shit because I live here and I see it every day. And if I was to actually go through neighborhood by neighborhood and show you who owns the houses in the Black community, who owns the businesses, who's got more money, who did it, it was going to be Black women versus Black males, right? And then if you do the same in the Hispanic neighborhoods, there will be some, but there will not be as many as Black women and a few trickles of Black males in the Black community because we've been here the longest. And the majority of us came into the city and we're like tenured in having city jobs, state jobs, and federal jobs because of when David Dinkins came and he was the mayor of New York City. He went out of his way to include Black people into every avenue that they were blocked out before by Mayor Koch and others who only catered to whiteness. So this is why I can tell you this is an absolute lie. It would be us in the second place and the Hispanics after us, but that's only New York. You got the whole rest of the fucking country to worry about. So from there, we go to, I wanted to go to Sharon Franklin Frazier's. This is an abstract of his book. Now, let me tell y'all, I tried to find this book on Amazon, and they were doing that bullshit with this book because whenever content creators or Black people in general start talking about a book from a long time ago and they want to get it, they raise the price phenomenally. This book is like $1,000 now. And on certain platforms like Amazon and others, it's almost $100. This little bullshit book is not worth all that money. It's just because it points out all of the information that Monahan used to put that report together, so that this is kind of like a historical document, okay, in a way. so that when people want to argue something, they can literally pull this man up. And this man was very important. Franklin Fraser was one of a few renowned Black sociologists of the time. This book was written in 1939. He went on to write many other books. He wrote about the African American church. He wrote about um, Black men single separately. He wrote about Black people working. He wrote about us. He wrote about us a lot. Let me see if I could like go onto Google and show you the different books that he wrote before I read this, because I need to show you. Yeah, here it is. American psychologist and author. Okay, I want to show you some of the books. Okay, here's his books, a few, right? So he wrote The Black Bourgeoisie. He wrote The Negro Family in the United States. The Negro in the United States is different. He wrote about the family, then he wrote about the Negro. The Negro, in the Negro Church in America. Then he wrote again the Negro Family. What did he write with this? The Free Negro Family. What is this? A study what? A study of family origins and origins before what? Let's see what this is. The Free Negro Family. A study of family origins before the Civil War. Okay, very interesting. Okay. And I want to tell y'all that the Revolutionary War and the Civil War were two different things. Everybody knows that. But the important component is that Black people in each war fought for their own freedom. So when people are telling you that shit like, oh yeah, well, we freed you and we didn't know. Black people were in every war that was ever held in America. Some they was fighting just because they had no choice. Others they were fighting whether they were on the right side or the wrong side, but they were fighting for their stake in America. And that were the two most important wars they ever fought was the Revolutionary War and the Civil War, which we fought for ourselves. So here, the Free Negro Family, a study of family origins before the Civil War, is what? This book is a comprehensive study of the origins of free African American families in the United States before the Civil War. Fraser examines the social, economic, and political factors that contributed to the formation of these families and how they were able to maintain their independence and autonomy despite the many challenges they faced. I'm going to buy this book. The book is divided into several chapters, each of which focuses on a different aspect of the free African American family. Fraser begins by discussing the historical context in which these families emerged, including the impact of slavery and the development of the free Black community. He then goes on to explore the role of religion, education, and other cultural factors in shaping the lives of these families throughout the book. Fraser draws on a wide range of primary and secondary sources, including census data, court records, and personal accounts, to paint a vivid picture of the free African American family. He also provides a critical analysis of the existing literature of the subject, highlighting the strengths and weaknesses of previous studies and offering new insights into this important era of American history. I'm definitely going to get this book. The Free Negro Family is a groundbreaking work that sheds new light on the experiences of free African American families in the pre-Civil War era. It is an essential resource for anyone interested in the history of African Americans in the United States, as well as for scholars and students of sociology, anthropology, and other related fields. This scarce antiquarian book is a facsimile reprint of the old original and may contain some imperfections. That's okay, such as library marks and notations. Because we believe this work is culturally important, we have made it available as part of our commitment for protecting, preserving, and promoting the world's literature in affordable, high quality, modern editions. that are true to their original work. Well, that's very nice of them, and it's not bad. I'm gonna get the paperback. That's cheaper. That's $22. Y'all can hit the hard copy if you want for 35, and I'm going with the paperback. So, but I just wanted to show you guys more of his books because since people were talking about this because of the surgence of black males with their ignorance and pretty much trying to continue to convince black women that they're nothing and that the only people that want them is them so that they could use and abuse them, because what it truly adds up is to these are men that can't males that can't stand up on their own 2 feet, and they need to use black women as a crutch. So the way that you get black women to come to you is to break down their self-esteem and constantly shame them with psychological manipulation to make them think that you and only you are the male that they should be with, when that is not the truth. You and only you are the male that they should stay far the fuck away from. All right, let's read this abstract and move on. So, as a result of the manner in which the Negro was enslaved, the African cultural heritage has had particularly no effect upon the evolution of the Negro family. Life in the United States. I screwed that up reading it, but okay. The destruction of the African American family system began in Africa, where the slave traders gathered their human cargo, consisting largely of young males. The process of breaking the Negroes into the slave system and scattering of them on numerous and relatively small plantations and farms left little opportunity for the slaves to reknit the threads of their ancestral culture. Memories of the homeland were effaced, and what they retained of Africa, of African ways and concepts of life ceased to have meaning in the new environment. Okay, so I messed up that word effaced. I'm always trying to think before I read, right? I'm reading too fast ahead. But effaced is a word that they use a lot in gynecology, right? Whenever you normally hear the word effaced, they're talking about the cervix. But I know this word from the dictionary as meaning to wipe out or to do away with or to expunge one's unhappy memories, right? That's literally verbatim what it means in the dictionary. And the reason I know that is because of always going to a gynecologist, for one. And two, whenever I did women's studies and African American studies, they always use this word. All right. So, but anyway, getting back to it. There were no longer marriages according to African customs, hence mating between subjects to individual impulse. Okay. There were no longer marriages according to African customs. Hence, mating became subject to individual impulses and wishes and to the control of the white masters. This is where these black dudes really became sexually capricious and disgusting, in my opinion, and still are that way to this day. And this is the reason why they made dumbass movies like what was that shit? The King Kong movie where they try to make it like white men or black men are always trying to rape white women. Uh, the Birth of a Nation. There we go. All right. Where was I at? New environment. And no longer marriage. Okay. The type of family system which developed was determined by the requirement of the slave system. Likewise, in latter stages of its development, the character of the Negro family was shaped by social and economic forces in American life, i.e., Jim Crow, segregation, civil rights movement, etc., etc. Under the system of slavery, the Negro family emerged first as a natural organization based upon the physical and emotional ties between the mother and her offspring. The father and husband played a less important role in family relations because his interest in the family was less fundamental. Of the slave regime. And this is where the whole thing of jumping the broom became a traditional thing, because it gave back a little bit of semblance of power to the black woman and black men at that time to sort of have some level of say over their children, themselves, and their family. All right. The attitudes of both husband and wife towards marriage, which had no legal basis, was influenced by the degree to which they had assimilated the sex and family mores. Mores, when they talking about mores, they're talking like mores, Norways, folkways, and what's that other word? Etiquette, not etiquette. Folkways more starts with an S. I forget. But they're basically talking about the belief systems of these people, right? Wait a minute, where we at? Moors of the whites. The process of assimilation proceeded, to unfortunately to our fucking detriment. The process of assimilation proceeded most rapidly with the house servants who lived in close association with the whites and shared in the lives of the latter. And just to let y'all know, because I hate when dumbass black people think that only light skinned black people are in the houses with the slave owners. Not true. Every colored slave was in the house with the slave masters. Your criteria to be in the house, even though it was a fucked up situation and nobody should aspire to do this, was to your loyalty to these white people. If you had more loyalty to them than to your own kind, you were more so a house slave. So get rid of that shit with the colorism, please, because it's stupid and it don't make no sense. Because mulatto children who were born back then could either be light, look almost white, be brown, look brown, be blacker than black, and still be mulatto children. All right, most rapidly with the house servants who lived in close association with whites and shared in the lives of the latter. Where slavery became a settled way of life and the plantation became a societal, a social, as well as industrial institution, the slave family was likely to acquire considerable stability. However, in the organization of the plantation, there was a division of labor and social distinctions among the slaves, which tended to reinforce the family mores of whites. So you understand what they're saying, that basically, in short, the only time these black males had to be fathers and husbands and they had no other choice was on the fucking plantation. Outside of that, if they didn't imitate what the white dudes was doing with their family, they would have got it all wrong. Because in the chapters before that, they spoke about how these black Africans started to assimilate to this white madness because of the slave system, and then because they were effaced, stripped away, had all their memories wiped away and removed from their Africanness. This is the result. And to go back to the part where they spoke about how no longer, were these marriages done the way they were done in Africa, but they were more so arranged due to the sexual impulses of these particular males at the time. All right, so where we at? Where slavery began to settle way of life and the plantation became a social as well as an industrial institution. The slave family was likely to acquire considerable stability. Moreover, in the organization of the plantation, there was a division of labor and social distinctions among the slaves, which tended to reinforce the family mores of the whites. The process of assimilating the family mores of the whites was facilitated and accelerated by racial amalgamation under the slave system. The very fact of white ancestry tended to make the mixed blood identity himself with the whites. Largely as a result of the race mixture, a class of free Negroes came into existence, especially in those areas of the South where the economic basis of slavery was being undermined. Among the 500,000 free Negroes, nearly 40% of whom were mixed blood, there was a substantial element with a secure economic position, especially in the South. It was among this element that the Negro family acquired an institutional character with traditions of conventional sex and family mores. Let me just talk to this a little bit because I don't like when people do that too. Try to pit the South against the North. Let me explain to y'all. Being a New Yorker, born here, but family come from the South, as all Black people do, except for the very few who were born in the North as slaves. Right? The slavery that existed in um, the North was the same as it fucking was in the South. So please don't ever think differently. The only difference about a place like New York, right, was the fact that it never had miscegenation laws. And I'm going to show you that soon too, right? But everything else that went on in the South, as far as being a slave, a free Black person, born a slave, become free, the same exact shit as the fucking South. Every bit of it. Every fucking, even institutionalized and included the Native Americans that lived in the North, that were here from New Amsterdam, that turned into New York. It included all of that. So now let's look at some of this. Like I told you, the Jim Crow laws, right? That came from or originated Jim Crow were these miscegenation laws. So here's a summary of dates of anti-miscegenation laws by state and the relevant legal cases. I want to go quickly, but like I said, I'll post all this shit for y'all to read it independently. So we know we talk about how black men always talking about welfare took them out the home. Bullshit. They've been out of the home since before then. And even though this is only talking about miscegenation, which I felt was more or closer to the family structure than things like Plessy versus Ferguson, which was more of a I'm not white. I'm not Black. I'm really white. It would go more for lawsuits that were won for the same privilege as white people on public transportation, Plessy versus Ferguson, as well as when, I don't know if you guys know of this woman, but her name was Ellen Pleasant, right? She also was one of the very first, I forget her middle name, but one of the first Black women to be a freaking millionaire in America. And she also sued the train company back in those days, like Plessy, and she actually won. So, because she was kicked off the same way Plessy was. So I didn't include them because that's sort of like, don't discriminate me. I want the same public access to public transportation as everybody else. I just talked about the stuff that was close to family. So here we go. So these are summary of Jim Crow anti-miscegenation laws. So it started in like 1883. You had Pace versus Alabama, right? Then it went to 1925, and you have Ex parte Sung Sing, right? Versus Washington, basically America. This one is very interesting because if you go to law school, you learn about this one. This one is about a Chinese woman that went to visit China, and while she was in China, she got married, and she tried to bring this dude home with her. And when she tried to come back to America, they refused her nationality. It said she wasn't American because she was married to a man that was deemed ineligible for citizenship. So this is all the shit that, like, you take into consideration when we think about how the family structure is formed, the dysfunction of the family, and how America and all its racism and its white supremacist ways and indoctrination of society and into your mind, literally psychological conditioning and indoctrination transforms you. I just wanted to throw that in there because I thought it was very informative, right? Then you have other stuff that came from the census, like this one here in 1930, the Motion Picture Production Code, right? This was the first attempt at introducing film censorship to the U.S., where, like where you get that PG rating and they talk about, it's parental guidance is suggested, we go by what the moms and dads of America think is allowable for the children. And then you have here 1933. This was a Hispanic clerk that got married to a white chick, right? and she found out that she was, wait, how's it go? Either, yeah, it was him. They thought he was like Hispanic or something. When come to find out, he was really Filipino, and it was just a ridiculous case. But that's part of this history too. And then you have Perez versus Sharp, where, and a lot of this shit is in California, believe it or not. So this is, again, this was a black person who was like had a mixed race and stuff. And back then they used to call black and Asian people mongoloids. So this was a mixed black person trying to marry a white person in their mind. This Hispanic person who was actually a Spaniard, Andrea Perez, right? And you know the story if you look it up. But anyway, this goes all into how these white people in America, how they say, assimilated and formed people with their mores of white family. And then it goes on. You have McLaughlin versus Florida, and then you have who is this? Brazil versus America, and then who is the United States, and then you have so many more, right? Okay, but here's the thing: when I was telling y'all how the anti-miscegenation laws, you have them by states. So these are the 9 states that never had anti-miscegenation laws, right? See, New York is one of them. And then here are the states where a lot of these lawsuits come from. Okay. And there are 11 states that had these anti-miscegenation laws, and a lot of them were either edited, they call it repealed, but it means that they were edited to bring them up to date, you know. And one of the ones that we spoke about on the last slide before this one, the Perez versus Sharp, was one of the main ones where it was brought up, where, it was the Filipino and the white person that was trying to get married, and how they was bringing up that this black person, this Filipino person, was actually Hispanic, had all this black history. It was a really, if you want to read an insane case, read that one. But this is just some more information on how, all this fuckery came about with the dysfunction of the American family when it comes to black people. All right. So I just wanted to show y'all that. And because a lot of times the point I'm trying to make is, a lot of times, right, it's not just so much the individual actions of the person because they want to be stupid. A lot of it has to do with them being crazy. If I if I can say this and keep y'all following me, right, with them being crazy, working within the guidelines and the functioning of the law. Like, they know they can be crazy up until this extent, so that's what the fuck they're going to do. And black people in America, black males really need to get their shit together. So when we come up to today, let's talk about the fucking nut jobs that are always on YouTube. Now, I'm gonna run through this quickly because I don't want Pretty Black Magic to get offended, take her video down like most of these women do whenever I share or include their video in anything I do. So I'm the most hated creator here on YouTube because I actually speak my opinion about these other women, and they cannot take any type of criticism or any type of correction or any comment whatsoever. So I'm gonna play this really quickly, probably a minute or less, to let you see, black women, that these dudes, now as ugly as this motherfucker is, gross. Like, look at his entire face. He got fucking bell pepper nose, fucked up mouth. Y'all be talking about my teeth, but this dude's teeth is fucked up too, and his face is just fucking destroyed. Okay, but he's ugly as fuck. And then he's gonna go on to try to shame and psychologically manipulate black women, most probably young, who are single mothers who are out here busting their ass to try to make a living and take care of their children to the best of their ability. Because these motherfuckers who have the kids with them, they break out and leave like they've been doing since right after the emancipation. Very quickly, y'all. Very quickly. Okay, he's fucking stupid. All of them are idiots, and I wish there was a genie, a jinn. I could rub a lamp and have them come out and make all these bastards disappear. Because the psychology of what he's saying is stupid. All right. Do you know there's actually cultures, bits of traditions woven into culture where when when men in society of different societies, right? Different ethnic groups, they die. It is mandatory for either their friend, brother, or somebody else from their family to step up who doesn't have a family of their own to take the place of the fallen man to make sure that that man's wife and children have a provider in the family, somebody to look after them and take the place of the man who had either been killed through war or something else, or who died of unnatural or natural causes. So for these dudes to constantly always try to go around berating and disrespecting black women to show them how, you know, these women are supposed to be chaste and perfect and untouched and have their virginity intact, just to have these bums, these guys who do not graduate high school, do not go to work, because there's so many studies on how their unemployment has got the city dragging because of the fact that the contribution they could give to employment would make the economy thrive much better. They're sitting at home on their asses trying to get free sex and women to be some kind of personal slave to them. And I want to show you next the results of stupid black women who actually fall for the bullshit this guy is pushing right here, and the type of women they become. One's like these here that were part of Nature Boy's freaking camp where he was sexually abusing and violating women and children. Okay. So let me show y'all about the night she's talking about. Now I want you to understand that these three women have decided that sisterhood is not important. The harm that came to another black woman like them wasn't important, but for them to protect a dim-witted black woman hating black male was more important to them than actually caring about this black woman that, you know, was hurt. Now, I had to say that I'm sorry that this happened to this young lady, but even as bizarre as her story sounds, this is the same thing that Black women are doing right now when they are out here getting into relationships with Black males who don't have anything, who have been known to be violent, known to be just irresponsible, not able to provide what they need to, and have done cruel and unusual things to other Black women before they get in relationships with them. And it's really a shame because what happens is that these young Black women, they, whether they want to accept it or not, they turn into the victims of Black femicide. They turn into all these women that are the victims of these stories that were preyed on by these dudes, the women and their children, and the little girls who were preyed on by these dudes that have the same nature and do the same thing that this nature boy, Elegio, whatever the fuck his name is, has done to these women. And this is what happens when Black males are in a closed vicinity with Black women and children. And this is why when people outside, non-Black people, ask Black women, why are there so many single parent households? This is the shit we deal with. We have to deal with a Black male who has been conquered by white supremacy and completely dominated in his mind, body, soul, and spirit by white men that he feels inferior to. So the only way that he himself wrongfully makes himself feel like he's a man instead of a male, which is what he is, he kills, hurts, violates, and harms Black women and children. And this is the main reason why Black women do not, who have sense, do not want them in their homes or around their children, because they bring violence, destruction, and death everywhere they go. They have become literally who they assimilated themselves after. I want to show you guys, hopefully I don't get in trouble for this, but this is part of this Killer Mike nonsense where he has this documentary on Netflix, right? Where he has a couple of chapters on here. And this is the chapter where he made his own country, where he bought some land in I think it was Georgia, and he's trying to create his own place. And the stupidity is unbelievable. So I just gotta let you see this and then carry on and end this up. Now, I'm gonna try to speed this up because I'm probably gonna get a strike for this, right? But I want to show you what this dude came up with when he's developed his own little country. Like, it is the biggest stupidity. Like, first off, he bought a home and land from this white dude right here, right? I'm gonna show you the house. But it was a nice looking house, right? Where's that? Hold on. Let me go back. Let me just. There we go. Okay, I'm just gonna show you just how it looks like when it zooms out. All right, there it is. Nice house, right? So it's a big house. It's an old plantation. As most people with money, they get their money from they got their money from the exploitation of black bodies and slavery. But these are the people. Well, I don't know. It was dysfunctional oddballs that he got to live on his little land there. This woman right here is the woman in charge. Notice she's not black, right? She's an Indian woman they put in charge. And I want to show you some of the dysfunction that has come about. This guy here, he was like a troublemaker and a rogue person. Like he just wanted to do his own thing, and they had a problem with him doing his own thing. And as I was watching this, I was saying to myself, wasn't the whole point of building this so-called new Africa a place where people could be free and be themselves? So if that's not the case, what are you doing? But what he's doing is being a prime example of what Fraser spoke about, Franklin Fraser, what he spoke about in his book of the African American Negro in the United States. So although Killer Mike was supposed to be so frustrated with American life, all he did was find some land to buy from a white man and to go on that land and get people to go on the land with him and then become the white man. The very thing that Franklin Fraser was talking about in the abstract of his book, The African American Family in the United States. Very interesting. I found it very interesting, even though I think Killer Mike is one of the stupidest people around. But listen, he proved Franklin Fraser's point. Now I just want to show you some of the data that people point to when they talk about poverty and how it affects Black women, which it is, to me, is important. It's important. I think that all Black women need to take this kind of stuff seriously, because it is serious, like, come on. So I'm sorry. Let me just go over here and put this on for you. I did the poverty piece. I need the one that shows. I'm trying to get it. I'm sorry. There we go. So this is what the Brookins was talking about, the inheritance of poverty, when it's all about men. Now, they did this in a couple of parts. PBS even did this too. They did it in a video version. But I wanted to show you that when they talk about Black men stuck in poverty, right? And then they talk about the gender is a big part of the story too, as detailed in a new paper from the Equity of Opportunity Project called Race and Economic Opportunity in New United States. It looks at them and their working practices, their employment practices. And then this one here talks about some of the things that goes into pervasive poverty. We'll just click on that one for a moment and see what they have here. So this is actually the location, the actual, because it's geography of the intergenerational mobility. So this is where literally these people are and how they're moving about. I don't see it. Oh, it's just the abstract. I'm sorry. So in order to read this, you have to go directly into it, but I'm not going to do that right now. But what is he saying? So basically, we'll jump into this paragraph right here. It says, we also show that The expected rank of Hispanics falls between that of whites and blacks. We find that the low mobility of the southeast of the US, documented by this man's study, right, is actually driven by low mobility by whites, and that blacks who grew in the southeast actually experienced higher mobility than blacks growing up in the northeast and midwest. We also directly imagine the role of migration and find that it plays little role in explaining the regional heterogeneity of intergenerational mobility. Finally, we see the rich set of covariables and test scores. All right, so basically, what they're trying to say is that they see a difference in the mobility and poverty of people in locations. Like they're talking about. Now, I have a problem with this because this speaks to, like, I forget the name of that guy who wrote that book, that black people need to vote in like chunks in elections to gain political power, and he's on this campaign to try to tell black people that they need to move back to the South because there was, in his opinion, which is not mine, that there was a time when black people had more power when they lived down South. Now, I know that's bullshit, but okay, if he wants to believe that, fine. He's making money to sell a book. But what I think is that black people, period, right? They can make money anywhere they are. Once black women stop wanting to play house with black males, really understand that the only way that they're going to get a leg up in society is if they take education seriously. And that could come in many forms. If you're going to get a whole bunch of certificates, learn a new skill, and then go out and get a job in that skill, get a college degree, get more than one job to make the money that you need. And most importantly, sister up, share up, and stay together with other black women so you could buy a home, have more money for bills and stuff that you can't afford, share the load in life with women who are going to be more reliable, more responsible, and more dependable than black males. Because with black males, you know, you only get shit like this. Like this. Let me click on this dude again. I'm so very sorry. You only get dudes like this fool that's sitting in a chair trying to tell you that he's the best you could get because of the fact that you were abused and mistreated and left and abandoned by black men who decided to leave you with a child and go off into the moonlight. Always avoiding accountability and responsibility is the actual pastime of these black dudes who, when you think about what Franklin Frazier was saying in that small abstract of that page we read from his book about how these dudes assimilate into the white Moors and family, it shows you right here, like their version of what they believe a male family is the inability and unaccountability of the black male to be an adequate father, an adequate husband, and human being to the black woman. This is what they learned, or this is what they taught themselves from slavery up until today, with them trying to imitate the white version of the so-called American nucleus family. It is disgusting, and it is something that I wish black women really wake up from because it's hurting us. And to share, the thing that needs to be seen, which is where is my black girl gone? There it is. To share the ultimate end goal of these black males' hatred and determination to control and manipulate black women is ultimately the killing of black women, children, and little girls who they feel are so very, more fortunate than they are simply because of the fact that these guys have been given no opportunity like so-called black women have been given, you know, and they keep saying crazy shit like, oh, you see, this is why black women are your worst nightmare. And what is not nightmare? They are, I forget how he put it, but basically the reason why they can't get they can't have liberties in life the way they want to because black women are standing in their way along with white males and putting them in situations where they can't be who they want to be. And that's not true. They're standing in their own way because they don't want to get up and actually go to school. How hard is it to actually, how hard is it, right, to get up and live your life to the point where you know you got to go to school? You know that you need education to live a good life, and you don't do that, but instead you do dumb shit like selling drugs, running in and out of jail, killing people, hustling and selling women and girls instead of using your brain and making yourself a productive person in society, and not doing simple shit like Killer Mike and speaking to a presidential candidate and trying to get him gaslight this person into selling unaccountability of child support by black males to a white man that's running for president. It's just crazy shit. But in the meantime, I want you to remember this, and then I'm going to end this live, okay? And this is very important because black femicide is the alternative to not realizing that the words that you're seeing in front of your face, and credit goes to She Peacefully Glows, to remind you that when you don't take yourself seriously and center yourself, you will end up dead by black femicide from dealing with these males that everybody is now beginning to warn you about the fact that they are not your best. They don't have you, they don't have anything in them or going for them that is in your best interest. So your best bet is just to get the hell away from them. Just get the hell away from them. Seriously. And I can't stress that enough because all you black women are ending up dead who are in relationships with them. And I don't care how many women come on here and tell you that people like me or women like me who are telling you to be by yourself and away from these black guys are wrong. I only want you to live. I want you to live, to see your children grow, and for you to grow old and tell stories about how you lived your life, not for you to get your brains blown out, your throat cut, or stabbed so many times that your body and face is unrecognizable by your own family members. These are some of the horrific deaths that our black women have come to by dealing with these black dudes. And it's becoming a problem that every state now is starting their own task force and committees to look into black women simply doing what it says here on this screen. Stay away from these males because your life literally depends on it. If you keep dealing with them, you're going to end up dead. That's a decision you got to make. And don't think that it's not real, because you could just count up the amount of channels that you have on YouTube alone and look at the number of videos just to get a small percentage of understanding of how many black women and little girls have been killed by these black males. To date, it is over 200,000. Don't be 200,001, okay? Have a good day, black women. Please center yourself and love yourself more than you love anybody else, because you are more important than anybody you want to lay down with, anybody you think that's supposed to have love for you just because they black like you. Love yourself first and foremost, and keep all these wicked black male away from you who hate Black women and who make it their business to come online and do nothing but shame and blame Black women into being with them. Only a lunatic would do that. This is the active practice of dark psychology. Please read the book, Dark Psychology by William Cooper, to understand the manipulation practices that these dudes partake in. Good night.